let's play devil's advocate for a minute. Let's just say that Anthony Joshua and or his promoter, Eddie Hearn, are the ones avoiding this fight with Deontay Wilder. Let's pretend for a second that this is the case and try and logically figure out why they would actually duck Wilder. Why would they avoid the fight? Well, the first thing that people seem to say is that Anthony Joshua is a coward. He's scared of Deontay Wilder, and it's as simple as that. That's why you don't want to fight, because he's from England, he's an English muffin, he's a cream puff, so on and so forth. Well, let's analyze Anthony Joshua's career and see if we can spot any cowardice in what he's done as an amateur or as a pro through his first, 22 fights he's had, 22 fights. As an amateur, Anthony Joshua was very inexperienced going into the World Championships in Azerbaijan. He had very few amateur fights at the time, but yet he took on the most experienced amateurs in the world and made it all the way to the final in Azerbaijan on foreign soil, and only lost in the final by a single point against the winner, who was Azerbaijani. So you can't say that Joshua showed any weakness mentally in the World Championships, because he took on top level opposition, made it to the final, and very nearly won the whole damn tournament. No mental weakness there. Then he fought in the Olympics. What was it, a year or so later in 2012? That was in the UK, and he did get a gift decision in the first round over Erislandy Savon. But once again, he didn't show any fear. He just got outboxed, got a gift, got through to the next round, had some legitimate wins. No question that his wins after that were legitimate. Then he fought Camarel in the final. It was a close fight. If that fight had been in Italy, maybe Camarel would have got it. But that fight was in the UK. Joshua got it. And incidentally, Joshua did beat Camarel in the World Championships in Azerbaijan. So Joshua wasn't getting hometown favoritism when he fought Camarel in Azerbaijan. That was at least the second time they'd fought. So once again, Joshua had stepped in with very little experience, very green on the amateur circuit, but yet was mixing it with the very, very best in the super heavyweight division. Then he turns professional, and he is put under the big lights from very early on in his career. Now, I was concerned, and I actually questioned Eddie Hearn's judgment early on in Anthony Joshua's career, because Joshua was headlining his own shows. And I had seen so many times over the years young fighters who had cracked under the pressure of all the attention from the fans, from all the attention from the media, and they can either crack because the pressure gets too much and they choke on the big stage, or they can crack in a different way where the hype goes to their head and they can start thinking they're better than they really are, underestimating opponents and getting knocked out. So I was very skeptical about the way Eddie Hearn was moving Anthony Joshua's career early on. I felt like Joshua should be an undercard fighter. He shouldn't be headlining so early on in his career. I was very concerned about it. But Joshua laid those concerns to rest, because every time Anthony Joshua was stepped up, he came through with flying colors. He never cracked under pressure. He never let the spotlight and the fame go to his head. He passed every single test. The Dillian Whyte fight was maybe the first bit of adversity he had to come through against Dillian Whyte. He got hurt in the fight, but he came through. He showed heart. Then he fought Charles Martin. Well, he had a few fights after that. Then he fought Charles Martin for the title. Okay, Martin, an unheralded champion, but still an American. Came over to the UK. Anthony Joshua dealt with him easily in his first heavyweight title fight. No sign of nerves, no sign of anything bothering him. Then he took on Dominic Brazil. I believe that was his first defense against Brazil. Another Al Heyman American fighter. No problem fighting him, a tough guy. Joshua showed no nerves, no problem. Then he fought Eric Molina, a former Deontay Wilder victim. Anthony Joshua handled him better than Deontay Wilder did. Easy victory. Then he took on Vladimir Klitschko in a voluntary defense / unification, because the WBA belt was vacant at the time. Klitschko was eligible to fight for it. So Joshua said, yeah, I'll fight Klitschko for that belt. He didn't have to fight Klitschko. Klitschko could have fought somebody else, but Joshua said, no, I'll fight him. Deontay Wilder could have said that he would fight Klitschko. Deontay Wilder was WBC champ at the time. Silence from Wilder. Wilder never called out Klitschko to fight, but Joshua did. So here we're getting into the territory of, okay, is it really credible to say Anthony Joshua was a coward when he's taking on guys who Deontay Wilder won't even take on? Makes it through the Klitschko fight. I mean, remember, this was Joshua's 19th fight against Klitschko, 18th, 19th fight. Who was Wilder fighting in his 19th fight? For Joshua to be a coward, why is he fighting guys in his 19th fight who Deontay Wilder didn't even fight in his 35th fight when he had the opportunity, or whenever it was in Wilder's career? I'm not sure if it was his 35th fight, but he was certainly deep into his career, and he had an opportunity to fight Klitschko and didn't take it. Why not? In fact, he had an opportunity to fight Klitschko for years when Klitschko was champion, and Wilder didn't take it. So how can Anthony Joshua be a coward when he was taking risks that Wilder wasn't even willing to take? Even when he'd had nearly double the number of fights Joshua had had. It don't make no sense to call him a coward. Comes through the Klitschko fight, comes through adversity. Then he takes on Carlos Takam, who's arguably better than anybody Wilder has faced other than maybe Luis Ortiz, right? Gets through Takam. Then he has a unification against Joseph Parker. Once again, he don't have to go into a unification against Parker. He could milk his WBA and IBF straps for a long time and not take on top opposition, but he doesn't. He takes on Joseph Parker. He puts it all on the line. Was the referee in Joshua's favor? Definitely. The judges were in Joshua's favor in the Klitschko fight, because as far as I'm concerned, Joshua was behind in that fight by the time he got the knockout. But nevertheless, Joshua did what he had to do in the Klitschko fight. In the Joseph Parker fight, a dull affair. But again, if Joshua was a coward, why did he take the fight in the first place? Yeah, yes, he does get favorable treatment from refs and judges when he fights in the UK, because he's a cash cow, because he's a superstar fighter. This is what tends to happen. It's not right at all. It shouldn't happen, but this is what does happen. And you just go look at Deontay Wilder when he fought Luis Ortiz. Did Wilder not get favorable treatment when he was hurt? I believe it was in the 6th round. Came out for the 7th. It was either in the 5th or the 6th when he was hurt. I think it was the 6th. He was hurt, came out for the next round, and somehow he gets called to the corner by the doctor to be checked over for no reason when the doctor could have done it between rounds. That was corruption. That was bias in favor of Deontay Wilder to help him have more time to recover. So you can't act like that only happens to Joshua. It happens to Wilder too. So anyway, once again, Joshua defeats Joseph Parker, a guy who Deontay Wilder didn't do a unification with. And you're calling Joshua a coward? I don't buy for a second that Anthony Joshua is scared of Deontay Wilder when I look at his track record. The people he's been taking on. He's had less than 25 fights. Look at the quality of opposition he's been fighting. Unifications. Okay? You look at who Wilder's been fighting. Apart from Luis Ortiz, who is an old man, and we don't even know how good Ortiz is anyway. Yeah? Especially at his age. We don't know how good he is. But yet, Anthony Joshua's the coward? I don't buy it. So, if Joshua is the one avoiding this fight, what possible reasons could he have for it? Because it's not cowardice. That's just not realistic to me. Maybe, and I've covered this in the past, if we're going to play devil's advocate and act like Joshua's avoiding this fight, maybe it's because there's some type of situation, some type of rift between Joshua and Eddie Hearn. Maybe Anthony Joshua has still not signed his extension with Eddie Hearn of his contract. And perhaps that's the reason why in this alternate reality that I'm describing at the moment, Joshua and Hearn are avoiding the fight. That could be a reason. Eddie Hearn has said, actually, I'll get into what Eddie Hearn has said recently in a little bit. Let me just follow through with this hypothetical that it's Joshua and Hearn avoiding the fight. So it can't be cowardice. Maybe it's some type of contractual issue with Joshua and Hearn that they haven't resolved. Joshua not yet extending his contract. Other than that, I can't think of any reason why they wouldn't take the fight. There's nothing, no realistic reason I can think of that they would avoid it. You know, you tell me something, because cowardice, forget about that. That's silly. Maybe they haven't sorted out their contract. Maybe Eddie Hearn doesn't really want to make the fight unless Joshua re-signs with him. Because what if Joshua takes the fight with Wilder, wins the fight, and then decides to go his own way from Eddie Hearn? And Eddie Hearn has just helped him put together this big fight, and he's lost his biggest star, who's just become a global star after beating Wilder. Could that be a reason? Again, it's just a hypothetical if you entertain this idea that Joshua and Hearn are avoiding it. Now, let's look at what Eddie Hearn has actually said recently, because some people are still getting it twisted. Eddie Hearn was quoted as saying he will not let Anthony Joshua fight with an 8-week camp. He won't let him fight Wilder with an 8-week camp. And some people have said, oh, look at this. This is just an excuse. And, you know, how can he say this? Well, again, to clarify what Eddie Hearn is saying, it's very, very obvious and plain if you actually listen to the interviews or watch the interviews or read the quotes in their entirety. You'll see what Eddie Hearn is saying is quite clear. But for those who can't get their heads around it, or who haven't watched the interview in full or read the interview in full, let me explain it to you. Eddie Hearn is saying that if Anthony Joshua fights Deontay Wilder next, it can't be in September. Why can't it be in September? Because the Canelo Golovkin rematch is going to be in September. Okay? That was the initial date that Eddie Hearn had wanted, was in September. But it can't happen because of Canelo Golovkin, and it also can't happen because Eddie Hearn is worried about how long Deontay Wilder is going to take to look at the contract and sign the contract. So he's saying, look, the pay-per-view situation don't work because there's only so many pay-per-views that American TV have got in September. And Canelo Golovkin is taking up one. And then on top of that, we're pressed for time. And I'm not gonna allow Joshua to take on Wilder with an 8-week camp. It's not enough time for a fight of this magnitude. So September's not looking good. So if he fights Wilder next, it's most likely going to be in October or November. Okay? If he fights Povetkin next, it still could be November, December. It could be, but probably more likely February next year. If he fights Povetkin next and then Wilder. And as far as the 8-week camp, you know, not allowing Joshua to fight Wilder on an 8-week camp, what would be the reason behind that? Some people say 8 weeks is long enough. Wilder will be okay with 8 weeks. Well, we don't know whether Wilder will be okay with 8 weeks because we're not 8 weeks away from the fight. Right? Between now and even September 15th, it's like 12 weeks or whatever. Okay, so we're not 8 weeks away from the fight. We don't know whether Wilder would actually take a Joshua fight on 8 weeks notice. Yes, he's taken other fights on short notice. Yeah, but so was Joshua. He's taken fights on shorter notice than 12 weeks before against lesser opposition. But against Deontay Wilder, he would want more than 8 weeks. Definitely. For a lot of his fights recently, he's been having 10, 12-week camps. Now, fighting Deontay Wilder is 6'7", 83-inch reach, I believe. Right now, Joshua needs to know who to train for, Wilder or Povetkin. If he can start training now, this is what some people are saying. Why don't Joshua start training now? And then when the Wilder fight gets signed, he can just continue the training camp. One of the issues is that, as I say, Wilder is 6'7". So he don't know whether he's training for a 6'7" Wilder or a 6'2" Povetkin. That's one of the issues. So you can start training now for a short guy, and then they switch it up at the last minute, and you have to start training for a tall guy. It's not ideal prep for a fight of this seriousness. Whereas Deontay Wilder don't really have that problem, because the guy who Wilder's looking to fight other than Joshua is who? Dominic Breazeale. How tall is Dominic Breazeale? He's 6'7", with a similar reach to Joshua. So from a tactical point of view, and from a size point of view, Wilder can just continue the Breazeale training, and there's not that much adjustments in terms of training for Breazeale than there is training for Anthony Joshua. Joshua is obviously a lot faster and more athletically gifted than Breazeale, a better fighter than Breazeale, as we saw when they fought. But in terms of dimensions, they're very similar. So the game plan that Wilder can implement will be far more similar against the Breazeale than Joshua's game plan would be against an Alexander Povetkin. You understand? Very, very different type of fight, very, very different type of situation. So that could be a reason why Eddie Hearn don't want to let Joshua fight Wilder on 8 weeks notice. And he's also talking about, if Joshua does fight Wilder next, as I say, it'll probably be October, November, and they won't fight Povetkin before then, if he's fighting Wilder next, obviously. So it'll be October, November. The one thing that Eddie Hearn keeps saying, which I find dubious, to be honest with you, and I think it sounds like some BS to me. Eddie Hearn keeps on talking about the venue, saying, oh yeah, if we do fight Wilder next, it'll probably be October, November, but then we're going to have to fight in a venue that's not ideal. We really wanted to fight in Wembley. What difference does it make? Okay, it's 10,000 tickets difference. Cardiff is where Joshua would likely have to fight Wilder if the fight is made in October or November. Cardiff holds 80,000. Wembley holds 90,000. It's 10,000 tickets difference. Okay, on the surface of it, that's a lot. But those are the cheap tickets, you would imagine. The extra tickets are going to be people in the upper tiers. 10,000 tickets difference. I mean, 80,000 or 90,000, how greedy do you want to be? How greedy do you want to be? You might not get a chance to make this fight if you take on Povetkin. Povetkin might beat Joshua. So how greedy do you want to be just for an extra 10,000 tickets? You're talking about what? Potentially not having the fight? No, that's BS. That's the one thing I'm hearing from Eddie Hearn, which is just BS. I don't want to hear him talk about no venue. Oh, we're not getting the venue we want. BS. The stadium in Cardiff, Principality Stadium, 80,000 is more than enough capacity for Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder. Yes, it's in Cardiff rather than Joshua's hometown in London. Watford is not too far from Wembley, so it's not exactly on Joshua's doorstep, but still it gives other people in the UK a chance to see Joshua, and Cardiff is not a million miles away from London or whatever the case may be. So that part of Eddie Hearn's spiel at the moment is a little off as far as I'm concerned. But the other stuff, in terms of the 8-week camp and all that kind of business, I can entertain that because this is a very serious fight. Make no mistake about it. Regardless of who thinks who is ducking who, or whatever the case may be, Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn are taking Deontay Wilder very seriously. Particularly Anthony Joshua. He is taking Wilder very, very seriously. In fact, I've said this before. I actually think Anthony Joshua rates Deontay Wilder as a fighter more highly than Eddie Hearn does. Yeah, I think Joshua really, really rates Wilder highly, despite all the bluster and all that kind of thing. I think Joshua thinks this guy is a very serious threat. If he didn't, then he would have taken Wilder's offer to fight in the US. He would have taken it, but he didn't take it. Right? He's insisting the fight happens in the UK. Why? Because he wants the judges and the referee and the atmosphere, etc. on his side. Because he sees this guy as a very, very serious threat. I think he sees this guy as definitely the most serious challenge he's had other than Klitschko. And maybe even a more serious challenge than Klitschko. But obviously he managed to get Klitschko in his backyard. So yeah, they're my latest thoughts on this Joshua Wilder situation, just clearing up exactly what Eddie Hearn meant. Okay, he's not saying he don't want Joshua to fight Wilder. He's saying that if Wilder takes a long time to come back to him with a signed contract, he's not willing to let the fight go ahead if there's only 8 weeks left after that. Yeah, because as I say, it could be Joshua training for Povetkin. Povetkin's 6'2". You don't want to train. He's trying to train for a guy who's 6'7" if he's fighting Wilder. You see. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. I'm sure people will be upset. I don't really care at this point, man. I just want to see the fight, as I keep saying. Hopefully we get it. Anyway, it's happening. I'm out.